All right, what's up and welcome to Not Another CFB Pod. We are a part of the Coda Cappers Network, and we love to be, proud to be. This was championship weekend for CFB football. That's what we just wrapped up. Don't ask me about my picks. Don't even ask. 1-5, the worst week of the year for us. What a week to pick, too, as well. We're still well above positive, but it still hurts the confidence a little bit, going into bowl week. This is really the time of year when I want to be smashing the board, being as confident as ever. But I can't lie, that's just not me right now. I'll have better weeks for sure. Like I said, worst week of the whole year. So not the best weekend to pull it off, but that's what we did, and we got to live with it, and we got to move past it. So that's what we're gonna do right now. Today's show, we're gonna be talking about the last week's big games. We're going to be talking about the college football playoff rankings. I've got a couple announcements that are going to come in the middle, and then we're going to talk about the bowl games going forward. Let's just get right into this. On that Friday night championship weekend, the Pac-12 championship, but went down in Las Vegas. It's a really nice setting for the Pac-12 championship. I hope they continue to go with that going forward because there was a ton of Utah fans there. But it's just a cool atmosphere there in that new stadium in Las Vegas. I have to imagine it's an absolute party down there. But we had Utah and Oregon, and Utah kicked Oregon's butt. I thought Oregon would at least cover for us. I didn't know if they'd win, but I thought, they can cover. No, it was just like the first time go around, 38-10. The Utah Utes take it. Shout out to Coach Martin. I told him on Twitter, it's the only time that I've gone against Utah all year. And, of course, it wasn't even close. They lost by 4 touchdowns, and it really wasn't even that close for most of the game. Oregon, I don't know what they're going to do, guys, because the big news with them is their coach Mario Cristobal just got hired away by Miami, who fired their head coach as they made the announcement that they hired Mario Cristobal. Obviously, Cristobal is a Miami guy, so it's not that crazy of a surprise, but still, the timing of it all, it's got to hurt. We'll talk more about Oregon going forward when we talk about the coaching hires, but yeah, I don't know what Oregon does from here. I've heard some rumors, Chip Kelly maybe making a return. He had a solid year with UCLA, so we could see him make a return to Eugene, Oregon, and be with the Ducks. Now that Phil Knight can just pay these players any amount of money, who knows what they could put together in Oregon. Obviously, they'll have to contend with Lincoln Riley at USC now, but that's another story for another day. Let's move on to the Big 12 championship. Baylor pulling this off, 21-16. This was the only bet we hit. We hit this under, and we really probably should have lost it. Both these teams were an absolute joke in the red zone once they got there. They were both turnover machines. It was not a pretty game, but these were two good defenses, and that's sort of why we took the under. It was just, the Big 12 championship. A lot of people were tweeting about it, so that's good. But it was a lot of negative stuff because it was just an ugly game. I remember we had the gambling chat, the group chat was kind of going crazy that I'm in and about that game because it was just so ugly. It was the first game in the morning there, and they didn't put on the best show. But you know what? Shout out to Baylor winning their first Big 12 championship, I believe. I believe it was the first one. And, you'll always take those. That's big for the program. We'll see what Baylor looks like going forward. It looks like they're going to hold on to Dave Aranda, knock on wood. Nobody's taken him yet. I haven't really seen his name in too many circles, but I guess it doesn't come to too big of a surprise because of how much money Baylor has as a university. There's no telling what they could pay this coach if they really think he's that guy. And shoot, you can't argue with what he's done. He shut down Lincoln Riley a couple times. He won a Big 12 championship in his second year at the school. I was big on Baylor coming in. I wish I had taken more futures out on him because it was one that I was on. I thought Dave Aranda's a great coach, the way he shut down Lincoln Riley multiple times. And, pay the guy. He deserves it. All right, moving on to the AAC championship. Cincinnati trying to finish off their year undefeated against Houston, and they won 35-20. It really wasn't that close. Cincinnati kind of took their foot off the gas. They were the better team in the second half for sure. And Cincinnati found their way into a playoff spot, 13-0. They're the number 4 team in the playoff. And guess what? They got a date with Bama coming up. And so we'll see if they're as legit as they think they are. We'll talk a little bit more about that game as we get into the bowls and the CFP rankings. All right, SEC championship game. Bama destroying Georgia 41-24. And Bryce Young snagged his Heisman. Bryce Young will be your Heisman winner. I have no doubt about that. I think he's a major favorite in all the sports books now. He was already minus 200 before this game, and he absolutely lit up that Georgia secondary. He had 421 passing yards and a touchdown, and also a touchdown on the ground and 40 yards rushing there. They exposed Georgia a little bit. Alabama's receivers are, to no surprise, a really good unit. They have a kid, Williams, that's nothing but speed, and he's one to look out for. He's not, today he had a great game. We'll see what he looks like in the playoff, but he's been an up-and-coming guy for Bama all year. They're the number 1 seed in the playoff, and I fear that they figured it out, and they are going to win after me talking all this crap about them. Might make me look a little bad, but we'll see. We'll see. It won't be easy in the playoff. All right, then we moved on to the Big Ten Championship. Michigan is an absolute wagon right now, beating Iowa 42-3. I like Michigan. I've been on them all year. I thought that they were pretty legitimate early on. People were saying early that they were fraudulent. This is the same old Michigan team we always get. And they really should have beaten their rival Michigan State. It's a game that they dominated, that Michigan State found a way to win at the end. I like Michigan in the playoff, guys. I really do. Michigan +9. That's the line right now. I'm just saying, we're looking at it. It's not an official pick just yet, but we're looking at it. Then in the ACC Championship, we had a crazy game where Pitt beat Wake Forest 21-45. Wake didn't score a point after the first quarter, but in the first quarter, they scored 21 points. I saw the over-under live go anywhere up into the hundreds, and this game finishes at 66. I know those guys that were taking live overs because of the pace of the game and the way the teams were scoring early on have to be sick. Kenny Pickett in this game had a play, and he's going to the Heisman finalist ceremony in New York, but like I said, I think it's Bryce Young's, and it's not even close, but he had a play where he was running down the field and the Wake defenders were kind of closing in on him, and he fakes a slide, and all the defenders hold up, and he blows through all of them and scores a big touchdown. It was in the first quarter, I think, or second quarter, early in the game, and it really got social media going, and they're still talking about it. Should it be an illegal play if the quarterback acts like he's going to slide but doesn't? Because what's a defender supposed to do if he leans in to hit him and he does slide? He might get kicked out of the game. So it's a really tough play for the defenders, but it's always funny when something like that gets the people talking. So I know I teased the CFP rankings a little bit. The final rankings look like this. Number 1, Bama. Number 2, Michigan. Number 3, Georgia. So that'll be one of the college football playoff games. 4, Cincinnati. 5, Notre Dame. Okay. 6, Ohio State. A little bit surprising that they were over. Number 7, Baylor. I thought Baylor would jump them by winning the Big 12 championship. And obviously, Ohio State not having a game this week, but you can't complain about it too much. It really doesn't make a big difference in the end. 8, Ole Miss, 9, Oklahoma State, and 10, Michigan State. So shout out to the Michigan schools, looking like they're going to finish in the top 10. All right, so everyone's been asking, how do I feel about Brent Venables to OU? It's hard not to get good vibes about this. I mean, you see the former players, the old school players that played for Brent Venables and the guys that just left the program and even the guys in the program talk about how excited they are to play for this guy. It's a really good sign going forward. I think the most crucial thing for OU is they have to nail that offensive coordinator position because obviously we got a defensive coordinator coming in to be the head coach. So he's not necessarily going to be able to call the plays. So we have to nail an offensive coordinator hire. I've heard a couple names thrown out there. The one I want is probably Jeff Lebby, if I'm an OU fan. There is some other names like Joe Brady floating around out there, but Joe Brady was only the guy at LSU for 1 year that led them to that incredible offense, and whereas Jeff Lebby, a little bit longer track record, possibly knows the SEC, things like that. Those are good values to look for, I think, in an offensive coordinator for a team like OU that's moving into the SEC. It's kind of unknown territory. You kind of need someone that's been there, done that. And I think Jeff Lebby fits that mold. You look around the league and people say the most, glowing things about him just in terms of his on-field product. And that's just that he's a savant. He's going to be really good. So if OU can win the sweepstakes for this guy, because believe me, more than one team is after this guy, I think that's a slam dunk hire, and that's who I want. Jeff Lebby, come back to Norman, man. I've been teasing an announcement, not only here, but on Twitter quite a bit about bowl season. I had something big planned for bowl season, so here it is. You know how you're just sitting there, maybe with your family, maybe it's a few days before Christmas or New Year's Eve, and you're watching a football game together, and you're like, man, I wish I had something for this game. Well, that's where I'm coming in. I want to have at least one bet for every bowl game this bowl season. I'm going to be posting about that play on Twitter. I'm going to be writing a short article on codasportscappers.com. I'll link all that stuff on the Twitter at Potato Gobbler. I'm really pumped about the bowls this year. There's a lot of good ones that we'll get into a little bit after this on the show. We're going to have one play minimum for every game this bowl season. And we're going to have a blast. College football going out on top. Check it out on at Potato Gobbler. We're going to make it happen. We're going to get on a win streak. It's going to be a lot of fun. All right, before we jump into the big bowl games that I wanted to talk about, let's talk about a brand new sponsor of Not Another CFP Pod. Not Another CFP Pod is sponsored by Moneyline Dice. Moneyline aims to revolutionize the sports betting market through the creation of both functional and novelty products that sports bettors of all levels will enjoy. Spotted by its golden peaks, the Moneyline logo symbolizes winning, and winning big. Featured products include Moneyline Sports Betting Dice, Moneyline Sports Betting Pocket Notebook, and Snapback Hat, and more. Use the promo code CODA10 to receive 10% off your next order. That's promo code CODA10 for 10% off your next order at moneylinedice.com. Moneylinedice.com. Big shout out to Moneyline Dice. They've got a lot of really cool products over there. Now it's time to talk about key bowl games. These are the big ones. We'll start with our playoff games, kind of what we think about them, what the lines are, etc. Let's talk about the Cotton Bowl. This is the 1 seed versus the 4 seed. Alabama taking on Cincinnati. It's a 13.5 point spread. Alabama's the favorite. Over under a 58. It's an interesting total. I don't know, guys. I'm scared for Cincy. I really like Cincy. I think they're a great balanced team. In fact, I've got a good friend on Twitter at Cheapy47 who's a big Cincinnati fan, and he was actually at the game, the Aac Championship game, the conference championship game that they won against Houston. And I asked him, give me a comment. I know he rushed the field, and I think he did anyway. I think he was right on the field and he was at the game. So I asked him, let me get a comment just that I can read off. And this is what Cheapy47 says. It says, the Houston game really showed how balanced of a team we are. I think this prepares us well for a tough matchup against Alabama. I can't wait for our shot against the defending champs, and more specifically, the Ahmad Gardner versus Jameson Williams matchup, and that is a big one. That's Alabama's speedster receiver versus Cincinnati's best corner, who is really, really good. John Mechie tore his ACL. He's one of the big name Alabama receivers coming into this one. So it's really, if Gardner can shut down Williams, all of a sudden, they don't have that many weapons left over after that are at least known commodities. They're still Alabama and they've got talent coming, just oozing out their ears. But I think Cincinnati could muck this up and make it ugly. If I was leaning in any directions right now, I'd probably be on this under 58. That seems kind of high, but that's going to be a fun game. It's a tough draw for Cincinnati. Their only loss last year was in a bowl game to Georgia by 3 points. And now they come into this game, in a 13-0 season, and they got to take on Alabama in the first round. But that's the playoffs. It's the elite of the elite. Okay, so Orange Bowl, Michigan versus Georgia. This is a 9-point spread. Michigan is a 9-point underdog in this one. I'm going to start this one off by saying I love Michigan here. I've been on the blue, and 9 points, man. That seems like a lot. Again, not an official pick just yet, but I've got my eye on it as of right now. It's a 9-point spread and an over-under of 44, which is kind of too low to touch, but also this is two of the best defenses in college football. I've loved watching these two defenses all year long. Michigan, Aiden Hutchinson, he's invited to the Heisman ceremony. We said earlier in the episode that this is really Bryce Young's award to lose, but he's going to win it. But having a defensive lineman be in that discussion is pretty cool, if nothing else. Georgia got kind of exposed, I feel like, against Alabama. Alabama slung the ball all over the field. Michigan doesn't have a great pass game, but I think they're balanced enough that maybe they can take advantage of something that was on film, that Bama picked up on. Maybe Michigan could pick that up too. They've been doing some really great things Michigan has on offense, I think, just to stay balanced. So we'll see what that game looks like, but Michigan looked great in the Big Ten championship game, so will be a fun one, no doubt. All right, so the New Year's Six bowls look like this. December 30th, we've got the Peach Bowl, Michigan State versus Pitt. I think it could be a fun one. Michigan State's been a fun story all year. They're number 10 right now in the rankings versus Pitt, a team who looked great in the ACC championship game and won their conference. So that'll be interesting. Then we got the Fiesta Bowl on New Year's Day. That's Notre Dame versus Oklahoma State. I think this is going to be an interesting one. Maybe not the most attractive one just because it should be a defensive battle. The over-under is 46. So, yeah, Vegas is thinking this is going to be more of a defensive struggle as well. Could be a fun game to watch, though. I'm going to tune in as a guy from Oklahoma, so we'll see how it goes. Then again, on New Year's Day, we've got the Sugar Bowl, Baylor versus Ole Miss. Baylor, the Big 12 champions, taking on Ole Miss. Baylor Bears favored by 1.5. That's pretty interesting. I don't know. This game could go either way for me. It depends on how healthy Baylor's quarterback is and how many guys opt out. I mean, that's really the story in bowl games. You got to keep up with that. If you're going to be betting on something in the bowl season, you need to know a couple of things. What's a team's motivation like? Who all is opted out? You got to try to take all that into account for both teams and see who's going to come out motivated. Because some teams take this just like, we're going to have a couple extra practices and then we kind of got a glorified scrimmage. Whereas some teams are like, we got to finish this season. This is the big one, and really take it more as a business trip. So it's always fun to try to stay on top of those things. Then these are just a couple other bowls that aren't maybe New Year's Six, but the bigger bowls that have some interesting matchups. We'll go all the way back to December 29th, the Cheez-It Bowl, Clemson versus Iowa State. I think this is an interesting game. Clemson started playing better as that second half of the season came around. Iowa State, obviously a disappointing season for them, but it looks as if their coach is going to stay around. So like how many, seniors opt out? What do the squads look like for that one? Could be very interesting. Obviously, Clemson just lost their defensive coordinator, Brent Venables, to Oklahoma. What do they look like? I think that's an interesting one. A game that I am so pumped about. The Alamo Bowl, December 29th, OU versus Oregon. Bob Stoops going to be coaching the Sooners again against Oregon. And some of you may remember this, some of you may not. But years ago, there was a great matchup between OU at Oregon and Eugene, and OU was robbed. There was an onside kick that Oregon kicked. OU recovered the ball, but this was before you could review something like that. And OU had the ball. There was a big scrum, and the officials were digging through the pile. Meanwhile, the OU guys got the ball up in the air. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'll probably have the picture or the play on the screen. But there's nothing they could do. OU ended up losing, and Bob Stoops says to this day he can't laugh about it. It still irks him. So I could see OU running it up here, and OU -3 is the first bowl bet I put in. This is a great spot for the Sooners. They just hired Brent Venables. A lot of the guys are coming back. They're going to have some opt-outs, but Oregon will have more. Oregon's not as good as Oklahoma, I think, just even if it was strength versus strength. We saw Oregon just get decimated by Utah a second time this season. I think OU would try to employ that same type of game plan, ground and pound, just try to run over these Oregon Ducks. I doubt Thibodeau plays. I don't think he will. In fact, I'll just say right now, he's not going to play. I don't think he's commented yet, but there's no way the big, potential number 1 draft pick for Oregon defensive end is going to play in this one. So OU -3 is the first bet I've played all bowl season. If you want to tail that, we'll certainly do a write-up and maybe talk about this as we go forward with the podcast. Then we've got the Tax Slayer Bowl. This is New Year's Eve. Wake Forest versus Texas A&M. Wake Forest was very disappointing in the ACC championship game. A&M had a sneaky bad loss at the end of the season to LSU that not a lot of people talked about because so much other crazy stuff was going on that day. I just think it's an interesting bowl. Wake, I don't know. It's going to be tough. I love Sam Hartman. We've picked him a bunch this year. They went on a great run, but it seems at the end it's kind of puttered out. We'll see what they look like. I think Sam Hartman said he's coming back for another season. So if that's the case, he'll probably play. It should be a fun game if nothing else. Then New Year's Day, we've got the Outback Bowl. This is always a fun one for fans to watch because Outback does that thing where if the SEC team wins, it's like a bloomin' onion, and if the other team wins, it's some other free appetizer that everyone can take advantage of. But we've got Arkansas versus Penn State. This is a Big Ten SEC matchup. Going to be a good one, I think. I don't know where to lean on this. I like what Penn State's done. When healthy, I think they're pretty solid. It looks like their coach, James Franklin's going to hang around. Then you've got Arkansas, who's pumped to be in this bowl game. Their program has come a long way under Sam Pittman in just a couple years. So I think this is probably a place where both teams play almost all their guys and they play extremely hard. Arkansas, when healthy, is scary. We saw them early in the season. Maybe they got a couple weeks to get healthy here. It's going to be a fun one, and shout out to all my Arkansas followers because I know I got a couple of them. But with that said, guys, the huge announcement for the bowl games I'm very excited about. I'm very excited about Brent Venables to OU. A lot of good vibes with that. It's going to be a fun end of the season. I'm sad it's over, but I appreciate all of you sticking around. Get ready for bowl season. We're going to be coming out with, I don't think we're going to do 2 pods every week, but we're still going to have a picks pod. We're still going to have the graphic out on Twitter at Potato Gobbler. Be sure to follow that, and be sure to follow at Coda Cappers. They keep me going, and they're a bunch of good dudes as well. Appreciate you guys keeping it locked. Let's have a really great bowl season. Peace.